Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneier, joined as always my co-host Nick Filato. We're doing a live tonight on the YouTube page. So obviously, as these lives go, some of you may be listening on the podcast, others who are joining us on YouTube tonight, I'll let you trickle in. Eventually, you'll probably have to catch up on some of the things we discuss. You may see some questions in that regard, but we will answer all that we get tonight, Nick. Well, look, it was... I referred to it, Nick, as the laziest loss I've ever seen, or I've seen at least in this Giants era. I mean, you have 3 touchdowns scored. You didn't get a single extra point on any of the 3, and you missed all your 2-point conversions. And it feels almost lazy that you were put in this position. The Giants, their company line here, Nick, is, well, Graham Gano, our kicker, he had a groin injury, and in the game on the first play, he injured his hamstring. But a tweet from Dan Duggan kind of tells a different story, Nick. And I'm not as frustrated with Daboll for that, but I'm frustrated with this. He said Gano didn't look comfortable at all during warmups, wincing after most kicks. This is from Dan Duggan. He then cut his warm-up short and jogged off the field. Punter Jamie Gillen is now taking warm-up field goals. And Duggan says, who could have seen a kicker with a groin injury being a problem? And this is the problem I have, Nick. This is the second time in 2 years where the Giants lost a game because of a kicking situation that could have easily been avoided. The Jets game last year and now this year. That's 2 more than should ever happen in any coaching tenure. And if I'm reading this correctly, Nick, the Giants only have a 52-man roster. They're not keeping the 53rd man on to save a game check. I mean, what the hell are we doing here? You have an injured kicker, and now you don't bring up the kicker from the practice squad, and you put yourself in a position like this one where it could be argued that you literally only lost the game because you didn't have a kicker. Yes, there's other things that happened. The defense played horrible. We're going to get into all that. But if you had a kicker, none of this might have mattered. You might have not gone for that 4th down with Neighbors. You wouldn't need to. And all the extra points would have given you 3 extra points. So this is just 2 mistakes in a row from Daboll in consecutive years from a guy who isn't providing enough outside of that, clearly, though I did think he put together a good game plan to make up for that. So I'm extremely frustrated. Nick, where are you at?
I'm right there with you. It's the kicking situation, right? You have a kicker on your practice squad that you could elevate. You chose to elevate Timon Fox and Ty Summers. Special teams guys wanted some linebacker depth. I get that to some degree, but, Saturday or whatever the hell it was, Graham Gano pops up. This is a 37-year-old kicker who's had some soft tissue injuries and some injuries in his past. Don't you want that contingency plan, that insurance policy in place in what figures to be a low-scoring game against a Washington Commanders team like this? Won't you want that? Like, the Giants lost this game for plenty of reasons, but not having that contingency plan in place is really what bit them in the ass. We saw it absolutely change the entire game plan for the New York Giants, rightfully so. And I just can't figure out how they don't have anybody who can make a damn kick on that damn roster, man. Like, these are all athletes out there. I get it. It's timing based, and I'm kind of being glib there with that comment, but at the same time, man, like, you gotta elevate Jude. Elevate him. Why wouldn't you not? Like, they lost this game because of that, Dan. Like, and that is inexcusable in my opinion, dude. For what? A couple special teams guys? You have guys who can work into those special teams rotation. You know me, man. I'm big on special teams. I know that's very valuable, but he's a 37-year-old kicker who just popped up with a groin injury. Make sure that doesn't bite you in the ass, and it bit you in the ass. And dude, this is just another one of those. I've deemed them calculated risks in the past where you're like, yeah, this could bite us in the ass, but we have these other things we need to take care of, and let's just hope it doesn't bite us in the ass. You know, we can go into the season with Marcus McKeithen as our backup swing interior offensive lineman. It's fine. Josh Azudu, he can be our backup swing tackle. It's fine. You know what? We don't need a blocking tight end. Let's just keep 3 tight ends, 2 of them being former wide receivers. Absolutely fine, Dan. It's not going to bite us in the ass. They all bit the Giants in the ass, and here we are now, year removed from last year's debacle, and these mistakes are still coming up. They're still cropping up, and they're resulting in losses for the New York Giants, and I'm just getting sick of it.
It's embarrassing that we've had 2 games in the last 2 years where we didn't have a kicker for the game. Like, figure this out. Like, what are you doing? And for Daboll to sit there, and Daboll has been so stubborn in these post press conferences. And I'm telling you, man, you're starting to see a little flashes. Do you remember the weirdness and stuff that happened with Judge at the end in the pressers, you're starting to see a little flashes from that from Daboll, which is a bad sign for him because it's only going to get uglier from here. You don't have Washington every week on the schedule. You're going to start having some serious teams on the schedule that are going to be probably leading to more losses and probably leading to situations where a kicker doesn't matter. You're not even in the game to begin with. You have no chance at all. And then what's going to happen in these pressers? We're starting to see Judge moments, but like, look, if he's going to sit there and say, these are totally unrelated things, Gano's injury during the week and what happened in this game, it's a hamstring injury, then why the hell is Dan Duggan saying Gano didn't look comfortable at all during warmups? He's wincing after most kicks. Like, that does not sound like somebody who is ready to go and 100%. And you know what? They just got unlucky. He pulled a hammy. It has nothing to do with this. Sometimes, and we don't know about this, Nick, but it's speculation. Sometimes when you have these injuries, a soft tissue injury, any kind of injury in the lower half, you can have compensation injuries. This has happened throughout the past with plenty of Giants receivers and D-backs where you have one injury and it leads to another injury because your body is compensating for that injury. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but the dude was wincing in pain during warmups. Yeah. And you have, I think, and I'm not, you could correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't know if you know this, Nick. Somebody in the comments, please let me know. I'm pretty sure the Giants only have 52 men active because they're trying to save some money on a 53rd man paycheck. Bring up the kicker. What are you doing? You have an injured guy on your roster at a position where no one else can play it. And it's very important to the team winning and losing games. You literally lost the game because of this. You played a whole game without a kicker. It's embarrassing. It's pathetic. Like, what are we watching at this point? What kind of team is this? And why am I supposed to sit here and be like, if he just gets his quarterback to develop, everything's going to be good? First of all, they didn't win anything with him and Josh Allen. And Josh Allen is better than Brian Daboll. That's what I've learned. Josh Allen is better than Brian Daboll. I watched Josh Allen roll out of a pocket on Thursday and rip a pass to, I believe, James Cook or whoever the hell that was on the run. That's what he is. That's not Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll's not out there playing quarterback for Josh Allen, and he's not providing enough as an actual head coach to make up make up for the supposed edge he's giving us as an offense, which I don't even know if is true at this point, dude. Kevin O'Connell has Sam Darnold at 2-0, right? Like, Drew Petzing has made the looks unbelievable over there. That's what an advantage looks like, okay? Great. Brian Daboll, what advantage do we have? Like, he did a great job today coaching with what is the situation is, which is he's trying to protect Jones. It's a ball control game. That's what Jones said after. Ton of two-man routes, ton of protections, whatever. It worked. So it really did work. Like, they moved the ball against a shit defense that Baker Mayfield just torched for 304 TDs. They're not going to get to face that defense every year. But the fact of the matter is, you should never have a game, Nick, where you're a fan of a team and you don't have a kicker. You don't have a kicker, and it literally costs you the game. It's just unbelievable, dude. It's unbelievable.
It's Murphy's Law, Dan. It's Murphy's Law. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong with the New York Giants.
But why is it happening to us every
because
year?
They put themselves in these positions, man. They put themselves in these positions. They take these freaking risks, and then they always just come up and bite them right in the ass every single time.
When has the risk worked, though, for Daboll?
It doesn't seem like many of those risks have worked. It really doesn't.
He's just so stubborn about everything. Like, last year, the same type of thing happened with the kicker situation with the Jets game, and now it's happening again. And he's acting like, oh, I'm not taking any blame for this. It's not my fault at all. It's just a random unlucky injury for us. Same thing with the Adoree Jackson punt return. I'll put him right back on there. Not my fault at all. It's just a random bad luck situation.
And I think that's what's so frustrating about it is you would think they would learn from this. Especially again against a team like the Commanders, a team with this kind of, you knew you were going to at least be able to move the football on offense against this defense. Like, having a kicker is imperative. And we're learning a lot. And we'll get into this. I don't even know if you want to move on from the debacle of Brian Daboll in this kicking situation, but this defense might be historically bad. This defense is terrible. They have no idea what they're doing from a run fitting standpoint. And they play so far off, which I get. If you can come down really quick and make tackles, which we saw at certain points, I felt like Cliff Kingsbury, he kept rolling out those 3x1 sets and then just hitting either the 3 or the 2 with a little bubble screen or a little quick screen. And towards middle of the second quarter, you saw Bobby Okereke and you saw Andrew Phillips just flying up, making those tackles. But for a little while in the beginning part of that game, they were just getting like 7, 8, 9 yards there, right? And there's just these huge areas of the field that are just uncovered, broken. Zach Ertz running wide open down the field. Why is Jason Pinnock hugging Zach Ertz? Zach Ertz is older than we are, Dan. Like, what the hell is going on here?
Too much space. And it's interesting, Nick, but we really took it for granted what Wink Martindale provided for this Giants franchise, for this team, for this defense, because, you know, a coach, I always say the players play and the coach is coach, Nick, but when you have to install a new defense and a new system, there are times we've seen throughout the NFL where teams are just lost for the beginning period of that on the defensive side of the ball. The Giants are now in that stage. They were there with James Bettcher. They weren't there ever with Wink Martindale, dude. Like, they came out ready to go from week 1 of Wink Martindale's tenure as the New York Giants defensive coordinator. Good game against the Titans. Early on, good game against Lamar Jackson. Really good game plan there. Like, he had them ready. And now it just doesn't look like Shane Bowen has them ready to at least execute at a high level. Because look, this Washington offense did not move the ball against the Bucs last week. That's a veteran defense by Todd Bowles, okay? And you could say all you want about the talent, but we have some talent on this defense. Deonte Banks played well today. Tyler Nubin played well today. We're going to get into some silver linings later. Drew Phillips played well. These DNs are supposed to be good players for the Giants, right? Like Dexter Lawrence shows up every game. Bobby Okereke shows up every game. It's not like a situation where you're held back too much by the talent. You have to be, like you said, the run fits look unbelievably bad on the defense side of the ball, in addition to just open space in the passing game. That makes no sense. And you're going against like a situation where you should be able to attack downhill against this type of coordinator, Cliff Kingsbury, all game. You should be aggressively fitting the run all game. It shouldn't be these types of situations where you're dealing with what we saw today. We're going to get into the defense in a little, Nick, but I have to bring this up because it really bothered me when I saw this. The Giants have started 0-2 in 9 of the last 12 seasons. 9 of the last 12 seasons, we watched a team go 0-2. Teams have a 1.7% chance of making the playoffs after they drop to 0-2. They have not made the playoffs in any of those seasons. Yes, you can say 2007. I'm talking about the last 12 years. We're dating way too back to 2007. So simply put, the Giants in 9 of the last 12 years have been out of the playoffs after the second game of the season. That spanned over multiple general managers, over multiple head coaches, and over 2 quarterbacks. And at that point, Nick, it's like, where does the rot end? Where does it start? Where does it end? You know, I can sit here and blame John Mara, but I don't know if it's even as simple as that. Like, it's just, I can't figure this thing out, but it's like, the fans are going through a lot here, dude. They're going through a team that's like out of it by the second game, year after year after year. It's enough is enough at this point. Something has to be done. I don't know what it is, but I'm telling you what, Nick, like, they're trending in a spiraling right now. Like, they may win some games this year because they're not that bad of a team, I don't think, is what they've shown. But it's starting to look really grim for Brian Daboll. It's starting to look really grim for Joe Shane as well, despite the fact that, like, the early returns on this rookie class are pretty good so far. Like Neighbors, Nubin, and Drew Phillips.
I know. And another just really frustrating thing about the kicking situation and the defense being so bad is it puts a burden on your offense. And we know how questionable the Giants offense is. Remember last week, it wasn't that long ago, but this week they were at least functional against a terrible defense. But the Devin Singletary fumble basically killed them. They were up 12-9, I think, coming out of halftime.
Big momentum, you're right.
Ball. I think it was like a 19-yard catch to Darius Slayton to start the half. And we're like, all right, let's go. You know, maybe we'll drive down the field, get a touchdown, take a nice little lead. This is going to be good. And Devin Singletary fumbles the football. And that sucks because Devin Singletary looked phenomenal today, other than that fumble. But that fumble basically zapped all the momentum the Giants had because the Commanders possessed the football, 9 plays, 50-something yards, field goal. Giants go 3 and out because Daniel Jones, he went to go throw the ball to Neighbors on that first down. It was a little high. Neighbors couldn't bring it in. And I'm going to get to this in a little bit. And okay, 3 and out. And then another 9 play, chew up 5 minutes, 6 minutes on the clock, another field goal. And it's like the entire momentum the Giants had in the first half is gone now. And it just puts, when the defense is that bad and then you don't even have a special teams as a freaking option because of negligence, it puts so much on your offense to be efficient and to not make mistakes. And the Devin Singletary fumble, coupled with that drop pass by Malik Neighbors at the end of the game, again, Malik Neighbors was sensational. He is a dude, you know what I'm saying? We're not blaming him, but it was a mistake. It leads the Giants to losing football games. Like, you cannot put this freaking offense in a position where they have to carry the burden for the team. This offense, that's not this offense's identity at all. And they just went up against one of arguably the worst defense in the entire National Football League, and they still end up losing this game. And they scored like 2 touchdowns. I think Daniel Jones threw for like 190 yards, and we're like, oh yeah, that wasn't that bad. But at the same time, it's like the defense didn't allow them to do anything. It's usually the other way around. It's such a frustrating team to cover, man, and follow.
Right, because you said it best.
There's no complimentary football at all. There's no
complimentary football at all ever with this team, seemingly since the beginning of this tenure. But you said it best because we were looking to like a week where the Giants kept the game script to a point where the pass rush could get alive. This was that week, and yet we didn't. And then part of this obviously is the game plan. Like Cliff Kingsbury is just getting the ball out so fast. There's not a lot of these like long drops, so like it's partly the problem. But like, yeah, you can one hand look at it like, oh, silver lining, Shane Bowen's defense really shored up in the red zone. And there were some good moments. But like, how many of those were self-inflicted wounds by Washington with these dumbass false starts they kept doing in the red zone? These illegal procedures were like moving it back. 5. Like this could have been uglier. This could have been an even uglier game for the Giants if Washington didn't kill themselves with all those stupid penalties that really hurt them. And obviously, like another thing that we didn't even mention, which is frustrating, is that penalty on Drew Phillips, which is a horrific call when Zach Ertz just bulldozed him, because that's a third down sack for the Giants. They would have had to punt Washington. Instead, they wasted another 5 minutes of clock and then got a field goal, which ultimately ended up making a difference. So like that's another thing to even think about that we didn't even consider as outside of like the coaching or the defense. But the reality is the Giants didn't force a single punt all game against an offense that didn't really move the ball that well at all against Tampa. And as we watch through the year, like they'll get better. Jaden has some talent for sure, but it's Cliff Kingsbury, okay? And it's a really bad offensive line. They're probably not going to be able to sustain the drives like they sustained against the Giants today against all teams. We'll look forward, we'll track Washington, and we'll get back to you. But I can guarantee you they're not going to have no punt game, I will say, the rest of the season, because you know what led to that? It's that Kingsbury was able to do what he wanted on the ground. Teams are going to take away the running game. Last week, Tampa took away the running game. The Giants should have been able to take away the running game against this blocking offensive line that Washington has, against how one-dimensional they are right now from a schematic standpoint under Cliff Kingsbury. They were not able to, and that's the problem right now. Like you said, it's a schematic issue. They're not bought into this defense. They don't understand this team, whatever it may be, or it's on Bowen. We'll find out in the tape, obviously. It may even be a personnel issue. These are things we're going to find out, Nick, but like that was it. Like if they couldn't run the ball, Washington, this whole game would have been different. The fact that the Giants were unable to stop the run, flashbacks to like 2022 bad levels of run, different kinds, obviously. It wasn't like the counters and stuff, but like, my God, man, it's unbelievably frustrating.
It's very frustrating. I mean, Washington averaged, what was it, 6 point? I had it somewhere. They averaged like 6.9 yards on the deck or something like that. No, 6.1. But Brian Robinson had 7.8. It was Jaden Daniels that kind of brought it down at a 4.4 clip. But how many times does Jaden Daniels get a 3rd and 10 and there's no contain, there's no spy, and Jaden Daniels ends up picking up the first down or putting them in a position to go forward on 4th? It's just you have to watch out for him. He is more of a threat with his legs than he is throwing the football at this point. Like, you have to contain this guy. And it happened, I think, 3 times in the game in that situation where the Giants defense, they actually force a 3rd and long, and then they capitulate the 3rd and long. And it's like, and now another set of downs, and allows them to matriculate the football down the field. Shout out Hank Stram.
And you said it best, Nick. This team just, it's like a Murphy's Law, you always call it. It's like it finds ways to disappoint us in ways that are, again, like they redefine history in a lot of ways. I'll shout out for this stat. It's an unbelievable stat, and it's from WBG84. Good follow on Twitter. It says, Commanders against the Giants today became the first team in NFL history. Just stop right there for a second and pause. We keep doing this. We keep making teams the first team in history to do something stupid, whatever it may be, to win a game where they scored 20 or more points, 20 or fewer points, 20 or more points, not a single touchdown, and committed 10 or more penalties. That's what the Commanders did today. They beat themselves in this game. They didn't score a single touchdown, and the Giants were unable to win the game for a variety of reasons, not stopping them at all, not forcing a punt, the kicking situation, which is basically, in my opinion, what decided the game, the Singletary, the fumble, the penalty on Drew Phillips, and the Malik Neighbors drop. Now, I'm going to get into that right now, Nick, because I have a very strong stance on the Malik Neighbors drop. And there's a lot of people who disagree with me on this because I knew this was going to be the case. And I saw it all throughout my replies. People are very harsh on drops. They don't believe in drops. You should never drop a football. Malik Neighbors made a mistake. He dropped the football. It was a bad play by him. He dropped the football. That was one mistake in a 100-play game, a 100-plus play game. And for someone to tell me with the straight face in my comments, which a lot of people told me, Nick, Malik Neighbors lost the Giants the game because he's supposed to make that catch and he can't afford to drop the catch. He single-handedly lost the person in the game. It's like you don't even understand what a football game is. A football game is 100 plays. Yes, at that moment, Malik Neighbors dropping that football cost the Giants a game. But the Giants aren't even in that game without Malik Neighbors. There's no game without Malik Neighbors. It's 21-3 at that point. Washington, game over. Game over. He never has a chance to make that drop because it's not a game. How do you not understand this? This dude went out there, Malik Neighbors. He went out. Yeah, I'm going hard to defend this guy right now, Nick, because it's freaking ridiculous to me that he's getting some hate from people and people are saying he lost them the game. He went out there today, Nick, and became the second receiver in NFL history to rack up 15 targets, 200 air yards in a game. He had 71% of the team's total pass yards. 64% of the completions were Malik Neighbors catches. 67% of the yards came after the catch, not air yards, after the catch, because he did everything on his own. And then after the game, he sits there and he tells the media, I don't care how good of a game I had. I'm disappointed. The last play came down to me. I let the team down. I hurt those. I feel hurt that I let those veterans down. That's a leader stance. But for you to sit here and tell me he lost in the game, you don't understand what goes into a game. There's 100 plays. The game would have been 21-3 Washington before. There would be no drop. There would be no game. He was the entire offense today, plus a little bit of Devin Singletary. And Jones got him the football. Good job. Like, it was on time. He did a much better job. Jones had a fine game. He got the ball out there. He executed the game plan. He finally threw some passes ahead of the receiver. Didn't have too many misses. Obviously looked comfortable back there. But Malik Neighbors is the only reason the Giants were in this game. So don't blame him for dropping passes. It was a mistake, but it's going to happen.
I can't imagine there's many people who are actually blaming.
Take a look at the replies, bro.
I don't know. There's trolls out there, dude. Yeah, obviously, yeah.
They're not trolls. They're normal people.
The guy literally had what I think he had like a 60. He was targeted on like 69% of his routes or some like insane number. Like, his target share was through the roof. He was the offense. He's the only reason. He's the catalyst to the offense. He was the reason the offense was able to do really anything. And him and Singletary also was good on the ground.
The offense.
Yeah, it's kind of what it was like. Obviously, a different type of offensive game plan and philosophy.
Right.
But I'll say this too, man. Like, the offensive line protected well. Now, you're not going up against Nick Bosa or Joey Bosa or any of those kind of guys, but it's still Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen are good interior dudes, and I felt like John Michael Schmitz, John Runyon when he was out there, I think he left for part of it. I heard people talking about it on Twitter. I didn't really notice it, and I saw him back in there. Runyon, yeah. But regardless of the fact, like, they were holding up, and Daniel Jones was able to deliver, and it was encouraging from that standpoint. But at the same time, and again, this goes into the complementary football point that we were saying before, I wasn't like excited about the offense because we never saw them. We just hardly saw them. They had like 2 drives or something in the first half.
5 total possessions in the game, right? Or 6 total possessions in the whole game.
Washington didn't punt the ball one time, man.
Yeah.
That's
they controlled so much clock. I think they had like a full quarter more time of possession than the Giants in this game.
Yeah, I think it was 15 more minutes.
That's
which is
insane.
It's insanity, man. You're right. It absolutely is. And I don't really, I don't really know how you can allow a rookie quarterback like that to do that to your like, again, there's so many issues with the defense. There's so many issues. There's just so many issues with the team right now. Top down, Joe Shane all the way through, man. There is a lot of rot on the team. This team is corroding in front of all of our eyes, and it's week freaking 2 right now.
It's week 2. They've again started 0-2 for the 9th time in the last 12 years, none of which they made the playoffs, because no teams make the playoffs when they start 0-2, except for like 07 Giants and like 6 others in NFL history. It's like a 1.7% chance. But, if you're looking for positives, there are some that I want to outline. The first being the offensive line. That was some of the cleanest protection I've ever seen, really, during this era. I think during maybe Daniel Jones' entire career, that was probably the best pass protection he's ever had as a New York Giant, which is crazy to think about. And if you go back even further to the end of the Eli era, it's probably the best the pass protection has looked since about 2012. We're talking about 10 years of football, or I'd say in a consecutive games. These past 2 games are probably the best the pass protection has looked in consecutive games. And the run blocking even got going today, Nick. So those are silver linings. The pass blocking has taken a clear step forward. The run blocking finally looked good today. I guess, it's a good matchup for them, but still the run defense for Washington was not terrible. Yeah. In addition to that, Malik Neighbors was phenomenal. He was the entire offense today. As I mentioned, 71% of the time, I'm just going to say it again because it's so ridiculous. 71% of the team's total passing yards were Malik Neighbors. 64% of the team's total receptions were Malik Neighbors. And 64% of those yards, 67% of those came after the catch. After the catch, he did it on his own. So many of those little hitch routes that he pivoted, Nick, and took up the field and did that shit on his own. His understanding of space, his separation, that comeback route he ran where he just created so much separation by being able to break down and create that separation from the D-back. He did that. That's all him. He had a drop at the end. It was a mistake. Jesus Christ, the guy's allowed one mistake, especially after the game when he takes full, responsibility for that mistake. But I can tell you the defense and the kicker situation were a much bigger factor in this loss than Malik Neighbors' drop on 4th down.
Yeah, absolutely. And the kicking situation, especially because, like, again, man, like, we don't need to rehash it or reiterate this, but we've made these mistakes in the past. Like, why would you take that risk? Why would you take that risk? Why would you do it?
Make the same mistake
fool me
twice.
once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, kind of thing, right? Like, it's just it's frustrating.
And here's the thing, Nick. Like, we didn't go into this season with high expectations. I understand that, Nick. Neither you or I did. I think you predicted 8 wins. I predicted 7 wins.
I feel like such an idiot with that.
We have no chance. But
But then again, like, I look at this one and I'm like, you should have won it.
Yeah.
Like, you lost the game. Management lost this freaking game. And
right.
No, but the defense is also worse than, like, we were saying this defense was going to be bad. Like we said, the offense might have to carry the defense, but I didn't think it would be this bad. Like looking around, I don't know. I don't know if there's a defense worse than the Giants, and the Giants actually have talent on their defense. So what does that say?
I think the Washington defense is worse than the Giants. I think that'll prove out over the year, but we'll see. We'll have to track that one, Nick. Just my personal opinion, this Washington defense is horrific.
My point is though, like I think you're missing my point. We have personnel that can make the New York Giants an excellent defense, and they're not playing like it right now.
Good point.
What does that say?
Says that Shane Bowen is not the guy, or at least that
they're not picking up what he's putting down at the moment.
Right. Or they're not picking up what he's putting down. It's going to take some time. I just think there's such a bad vibe anyway with this defense and with this team. They're just not believing in themselves. They haven't believed in themselves in a long time, Nick. And it shows in these games because this defense, like you said, is not playing up to their talent level. And that's despite some good individual performances from guys like Drew. Deonte Banks, I think we're going to like his tape when we go watch his tape, right? Dexter Lawrence, Newman, like these are good players. Okereke, like playing good individually, but then as a team, there's no production there as a team. And it's just unbelievable, really. And it's like, look, again, my point was going to be like, Nick, we didn't have crazy expectations for this game. Okay. But it's not like no team in the NFL can ever come out and surprise you and be that fun team. That's what the Giants were in 2022. That's what they're supposed to be this year with Brian Daboll, okay? The Saints have done something no one expected them to do. They're 2-0. They've scored more points over the first 2 weeks than like all teams but two in the history of the NFL. One against what was one of the better defenses in the league last year, Dallas. And like, despite all of that, who expected them to be good this year? And look, I'm going to give credit to them. Clint Kubiak, I think Derek Carr's playing good football. Shaheed's a good player for them. They've always had a good defense. They've been able to mask their offensive line deficiencies. But it's like a good example of the coaching maximizing the roster there, right? Like we know that roster is not that talented in New Orleans. And the Giants are supposed to, on paper, have a better roster. But the Giants are 0-2 for the 9th time in 12 years again. And they don't look like they're being coached to the best of their ability. They've had 2 straight years now, Nick, of 2 things that have happened. One, they've lost the game because of a kicker situation, which is just pathetic and unacceptable and embarrassing. 2, they've looked completely unprepared and were blown out by the second quarter in their week 1 game in back-to-back years. Put those things together and ask yourself, why at this point are we even defending Brian Daboll? The reasons to defend him are growing thinner and thinner at this point. It's the idea that he should be able to mold a quarterback, that he should be able to. And look, we're going to watch the tape this week. I think we're going to see some fun offensive designs because I thought he did a really good job of creating space for Neighbors in this game to get him the football. So I think we're going to get some of that. But like Drew Petzing gives you that, and he's not a head coach, right?
Yeah.
There's other guys who give you that. Clint Kubiak's giving you that right now. He was hired out of nowhere. He doesn't cost that much. We need a head coach, dude. We need somebody who's an actual head coach, not an offensive coordinator, not an offensive mind, somebody who's going to be a really good head coach. And I thought Daboll was that guy. But if we really think about it, Nick, let me ask you this. 2022. Wasn't Daboll making mistakes as a head coach in 2022 as well?
Yeah, I think I remember us going over some of those. But we excused them because you got to bring yourself back to that time. We thought we were going to be terrible and we were actually winning, and we started hot too.
Seattle game.
The Adoree Jackson is probably the best example of that, because at that time Adoree Jackson was our best cornerback and we couldn't really afford putting him back there just to be a punt returner. And then he gets hurt and then he doubles down on it afterwards. And it's just, he's like being that, as you said, old stubborn football guy, which just I understand it to some on some level, but like you got to exercise prudence. Like you got to be prudent with some of these decisions that you make and know that some of your assets are more valuable in certain roles rather than risking them in another role that could be filled relatively easily by someone else on the roster.
Yeah.
You would hope, at least. As I say that, ironically enough, with the kicking situation, we had nobody who could fill that role, not even a punter who kicks the football for a living.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I know they missed one extra point with him, so maybe they felt like they lacking confidence in that regard. But look, it wasn't just the Adoree. We went over multiple poor management of the clock, specifically at the end of halves from Brian Daboll in the 2022 season. That did not improve last year, and he went the opposite direction. Instead of focusing more on being a head coach, he became the play caller and the head coach, taking away some of that responsibility of being a head coach. And you're seeing countless mistakes now from him and this team. They do not look like they're coached well to me. They do not look like they're playing together at all. They're playing down their talent. They were the more talented team than Washington today. They should not have lost that football game.
And Washington was doing everything that they could to lose it too,
yes.
Which is insane. All those, how many? They had 5 false start penalties within the 15
10 total penalties, 5 false starts in the red zone. Killer penalties that destroyed their drives, Washington. But it didn't matter because they were still found a way to outcoach the Giants there. And yes, Dan Quinn, despite not really figuring out how to stop this offense, which he should, I mean, let's be honest, most teams will this year, doesn't matter. He still outcoached the Giants because he didn't have no kicker for this game, okay? he had a kicker. He had a freaking kicker. How do we have no kicker for a full game? It's not like, again, if he just got injured randomly, Nick, it's fine. But the guy was wincing during warmups, wincing in pain, according to Dan Duggan. Like, is that not a telltale sign that you should have called the dude up from the practice squad?
Or I was paying attention. Sorry. I was paying attention to Duggan's timeline because I heard that Graham Gano popped up on the injury report, and I was like, oh, maybe it's like, I don't know, something small. And Duggan was expressing concern. He was like, this is something to monitor, everybody. And then literally the first freaking play of the game, you see Gano just go to the deck, and you're like, it's like Duggan just knew this was going to happen.
Yeah, because like us, Duggan has been through
he covers the team
for so long. And it's funny to some extent, Nick, but not anymore, man. I'm not having fun anymore. This is not fun, and it's not funny anymore. It's really despicable. And there are people who are paying a lot of money for these season tickets, okay, including family members that I know. And they're at this point at a horrible point. And guess what? They're also expecting these losses at this point. I'm getting messages today from some of our loyal listeners, Nick, that I've talked to for a while. I'm sure you've DM'd with as well, that are like, you know what? I'm actually not that disappointed in this. They expect this at this point. We expect to be this laughingstock 0-2 team every year where our season is over by the time we reach week 3. That's not normal. Like, we've been conditioned to this thing, dude. Like, there's probably some some theory in psychology that can explain what it is to be a Giants fan and the point that we've gotten to. But we expect this now. We expect this type of stuff to happen to us to lose a game like this, all this dumb crap to happen, because it just keeps happening over and over and over again. And I'm sick of it, dude. I'm sick of thinking about the draft this early. I'm sick of all this shit.
Yeah, I know, man. And then you see the Raiders go into Baltimore and defeat them. And you see Sam Darnold beat the 49ers, and you see these quarterbacks. And I'm not putting this loss on Jones at all, but I'm just saying you see teams that aren't supposed to win games. And you see teams like the Giants, who on paper are more talented than Washington, go into Washington and lose. And a lot of it falls on the shoulders of their coach.
How many games have the Giants won in this tenure that they were supposed to lose? Baltimore, for sure. Tennessee, I guess you can count it, but I feel like
Green Bay. Really a lot of them go back to 2022.
A lot of go back to 22, and a lot of them go back to the first half of 2022. That's the thing. Because even if you want to say the Minnesota playoff game, Minnesota had fallen off at that point. They started the season hot, and they totally collapsed, and their defense was in shambles by the time they got to the Giants game in that playoff game. So if you really look at it, this regime has only won games they weren't supposed to win in the first half of their first year. This is year 3 at this point. And not only are they not doing what you just said, like the Raiders and the Vikings, all these teams making these big-time upsets that give you hope and give you some feeling of like, we're going to outcoach them, we can outproduce our talent. It's going the opposite way, like you said. We're losing games where we are the more talented team. And that's when you start to think about, like, now maybe, a change must happen, but it'll play itself out at this point, Nick, because I know Mara's not going to accept a year where they're just this embarrassing over and over and over again.
No, absolutely not. And we can get to some supers too, but there's also things I want to if we're going to look at the positives, man, like Drew Phillips is a dude. This is his second week in a row where he was making multiple. That play that he had, I think it was like a flare or something. Dude, you don't see veterans.
Spun? Are you talking about the one where
you don't see veterans make plays like that, man. To have the understanding and the awareness to spin off that, get outside, contain, and then actually make the tackle. Like, he is a tough SOB, and he is a damn good football player. I'm glad he's a New York Giant. I didn't see anything specific from Newbin, but I'm excited to get to his film as well. I want to see what happened with the pass rush. Look, I mean, Cliff Kingsbury, he was designing everything to get the football out of Jaden's hands very quickly. So I'll say that much. I know that from the broadcast. On the 5-step drops and the stuff where Jane Daniels was sitting back there for a while, I'd like to see a little bit more from Burns and Thibodeau. But Thibodeau, to me, looked a lot better from the broadcast angle than he did in week 1. So that's at least a positive sign. And I'm excited to get to the tape this week to break down exactly why they weren't getting pressure in some of those situations, because these 3rd and long conversions, they have to go. That reminds me last year against San Francisco. Remember, Deebo Samuel had 3 3rd and long conversions, and the Giants just kept missing tackles on primetime television in front of the entire world. It was absolutely embarrassing. This kind of reminded me of that, only it was always just Jaden Daniels doing it.
Yeah, it was also a couple of those like really well designed. That designed inside screen to Eckler, I thought was nice. Like I feel like Kingsbury just got Bowen a couple times. Like he caught him. Like that 1 3rd down where they ran a draw, I believe. I felt like the alignment from the Giants defense for that play was just tipping off to the offense. Like you can run a inside draw here and you're going to get a chunk of yards. Like Giants set that up to play the pass and just totally sold out for the pass. You're just getting beat. Like when you're getting beat by Kingsbury, when you're getting out chest matched by Kingsbury, Shane Bowen, that's not a good sign. It's just not a good sign. This guy is not a good coordinator. It's tried and true. Maybe he's turning a leaf, and I'll be wrong about Kingsbury, but I'm sure I won't be because I watched the tape against Tampa, and they were horrible on offense against Tampa, and he was horrible as a play caller. So really, I think this was Bowen. This is on Bowen in a lot of ways, and obviously the players as well, dude. But it's just super frustrating to watch the defense be this bad against well, quite honestly, should have been some of their easier matchups, right? A rookie quarterback and Jaden Daniels with a bad coordinator and a bad O-line, and Sam Darnold, who we thought, but maybe that one is looking less and less like an easy matchup.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that could be a silver lining. Ronald, thank you so much. Says only the Giants could lose this game. And I hate the fact that that's a thing now, but it is, it is a thing where we have reached that level of mediocrity, beyond mediocrity, Cleveland Browns, New York Jets type of football, where it's like, only the Giants could figure out a way to lose this football game. Only the Giants defense can play so poorly, yet not surrender a touchdown, yet they screw it up on special teams so they can't kick field goals, and they somehow end up losing the football game. Like that just, it's Big Blue right now. It's very depressing.
It is really depressing. And like you said, there's just not enough examples of them out coaching the other teams at this point.
No, I know, man. Very Gooster, thank you so much, says, Gano situation has me at the lowest with this regime, if not completely out. Don't know how you let that happen twice. I am over Bowen too. Yeah, you ain't getting here.
Yeah, one way you let that happen twice is by not owning up to it the first time. And this has been the thing we're talking about with Brian Daboll. Like,
and you have a kicker on your practice squad, like a promising, a promising one who actually has a huge leg.
And again, you only have 52 men on the roster. You're just not using a full 53 to save a game check, which I didn't even know they would ever do as a franchise because I've never known Mara to be cheap. I don't really understand why they're doing that. I think a lot of NFL teams have started doing that, Nick, as like a weird, cheap thing that they can do to save some money or whatever. But like, Jesus Christ, dude, your guy is going into the game wincing in pain during warmups. Like, how is this a thing? Like, how unacceptable it is. And again, like, I'm not as mad, Nick, if he comes out in that presser and accepts his duty and his responsibility in that Brian Daboll. I'm still obviously going to be pissed because it's repulsive. It's happened already, and we can't be losing games because of this. But at least own up to your mistake. Like, that's the key here. To double down on it, and which he always does, Daboll. It's getting weird, dude. And like you heard about this long stare he had at the reporter who asked a question.
Who was that?
Pissed. I don't know who the reporter was. So I'm not sure. I wasn't there, obviously. But, we heard about this long stare he had at the reporter, these short, terse answers again. He's really angry, Daboll. He's sick of these questions. He's sick of dealing with these pressers. Well, guess what, dude? You're 0-2, and you've looked one game you look completely unprepared. The other game you lost basically because of you didn't have a kicker. What else do you expect, dude? Like, what is he expecting at this point from these reporters? And to be like, hey, you know what, Brian? I thought you called a great game today on offense. You found a way to design plays for Malik Neighbors. You did a great job there. Daniel looked really comfortable today. Good job, Brian. You did a great job, man. No, you don't get good jobs. You don't get pats on the back. This is the New York media, and you are disappointing the fans again for a second straight season. There is a possibility that for a second straight season, you are out of the playoffs by October. And you don't expect to get some expect to get some tough questions at a presser. That's the reality of your situation right now, Daboll. And my read on this, Nick, is the way he's responding now to these questions, it's only going to get uglier and uglier and uglier as we barrel through this tough part of the schedule. And guess what? We thought the NFC South was where we get a reprieve this year, Nick. I don't know about that. Obviously, Carolina's a reprieve, but Tampa looks pretty damn freaking good. And the Giants don't look ready to beat a team like that. New Orleans, do the Giants look ready to beat New Orleans right now? I don't think so. Atlanta may be a little easier than we expected, but I don't think so for either of those first two teams.
Yeah, Mara's going to judge these post-game press conferences, So
right,
Jay Ferry.
That was a play on words. Nice.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Jay Ferris. Thank you so much, by the way. Besides Drew Phillips, does Danny want Shane picking a quarterback at the top of the draft after 3 years of mid players? So I think that's for you, Dan. I think you're Danny.
Oh, does Danny want? Me, I guess I've never been referred to as Danny, so this is a little.
I don't know who Joe Shane's name is not Daniel or Danny.
Yeah,
I don't think it's Daniel Jones. So
I don't know who else that could be. Yeah, obviously Daniel Jones. Do I want him picking a quarterback after 3 years of mid players? I'll say this, Jay Ferries. Joe Shane, a big reason he got this job, I think, was because of the role he played with Brandon Beane in scouting Josh Allen and coming to the conclusion that Josh Allen was the best quarterback in that class. It was the correct conclusion. It was a tough decision by them. Not everybody was on board with that. A lot of people, including myself, didn't understand how Allen could be like a sub 55% completion guy at Wyoming and ever make it. And he found a way to fix his mechanics and to improve as a quarterback and become what I think is the second best quarterback in the NFL, from my personal opinion right now, individually, of all his supporting cast and all that stuff. With that said, in my opinion, Shane hasn't really had an opportunity yet. I mean, I'm not going to say he hasn't had an opportunity. He hasn't taken the opportunity. Let's say that, Nick, to draft a quarterback, to try to get someone. So that was what he was brought in to do, I think, but maybe not. Or that's what, what kind of got him this job. Daboll also has this background of supposedly being good with quarterbacks and understanding what to do there. I feel like Daboll got a lot out of Taylor last year. I feel like Daboll got a lot out of DeVito last year. I feel like at times he got a lot out of Jones 2022, first half and at the end. And even this game, for example, I thought he really did a good job with Daniel Jones, getting him back on track, rebuilding his confidence, getting him easy looks for Neighbors to kind of do the rest. So I still feel like that's what these guys can do. So if they keep them, that's like the least thing I'm worried about, them drafting a quarterback. That's like the only thing I'm excited about at this point, because because the rest of his shit, like Neal and Thibodeau, among others, Azudu, Flott, all this shit, is the more scary part than like the idea of him drafting a quarterback. So I guess the answer to your question is yes, I'm comfortable. I think that's the only thing they may be able to do right.
Yeah, I don't know if John Mara would actually really rip this Band-Aid off. I mean, there's so much to play. I don't even want to look that far into the future. Thomas says, and thank you so much for your donation, Thomas. Do you know the snap count for dressed players today? Even though they had an open roster spot, who dressed and who didn't? I do not have that on hand. We usually receive that tomorrow morning is when we get the snap counts, unless you go and chart it like Maniac.
Yeah. Can you imagine somebody if they charted that would be crazy. But no, we have to wait till tomorrow and we'll get back to you on that front.
Jay Ferries, thanks again, says Daniel Jones looked composed in the pocket and confident. Bad loss. Our defense grades out well tomorrow, I promise. Our DC is junk.
You might be referring to like PFF grades, Jay Ferries. So. We don't personally care about that, Nick or I. It's not something either of us subscribe.
I think that's the joke he's making.
Oh, I see. Because we have graded out well at times and not look good. Yeah. And as far as your first part, look, I agree. Daniel Jones did look composed in the pocket and confident. I feel like, he did a great job of bouncing back after last week. He didn't really attempt too many kind of like crazy throws, Nick, in this game. He had a couple of
deep attempts and he was off on them.
He was off on him. Yeah, that's the reality situation. He overthrew Neighbors on the one deep one, and then he kind of floated one up there into that like double coverage look where he got confused by the post snap rotation, and he didn't think the safety would be over the top, and the safety was over the top, and then everything else was just underneath. Again, remember, Neighbors was 67% of Jones's completions, 71% of his total yards passing, and also 67% of those 71% of his total yards passing were all after the catch by Malik Neighbors. So again, he did the job. He executed it. This is good from Jones. This is a positive step from Jones. And obviously he'll remain the starter because of it. And
Speaking of, Chase says Jones really deserves some credit after this game for bouncing back.
Yeah,
so does. What you want, but he has a good mental composure.
I agree.
Yeah,
because I think he's bounced back at other times too in the past, like that Tampa game and a Monday night and just other moments where he's had bad games and bounced back. I don't think that the mental, people were like, is he broken mentally? And we even consider that last week, Nick. I think this was a good example to say that he was not broken mentally.
Yeah, he came out. I mean, he kept him on script, right?
Yeah.
That's all you can ask for.
He executed the game plan mostly.
Ian Ernest, thank you so much, says, fellas, maybe a conversation for later, but Brian Burns plus Kayvon, where are you? If our pass rush isn't going to get there, we're going to rely on a second year and a rookie corner and rookie safety. Really? Yeah, Ian, well, we're going to get to the tape to really break that down. I know I brought it up a little bit earlier from the broadcast angle. Jaden was getting the football. That was the game plan, was to get the football out of Jaden's hand very quickly so Dexter Lawrence cannot wreck this game. But there were still certain plays, third and long, where I was like, where are those guys? They're not really getting home. So we'll be breaking down the film either tomorrow or Tuesday, and hope you guys join us to check that out, because I'm eager to see exactly what went wrong.
Yeah. It's disappointing though. You're right. Like we expected this pass rush to be the strength of this team. We were confident in that, Nick. I saw some comment from somebody today who's like, when are you and Filato going to own up for what you said about Brian Burns? Like the impact player is going to be. I'm like, it's been 2 games. Let's at least wait till midseason before we take the L on that, which I'm willing to take, Nick, if he doesn't obviously.
Yeah, same here. I'll take all the L's, man. It doesn't bother me. I know what kind of talent he can be in the right situation. I don't know if the Giants right now are the right situation, and that's
the problem.
Yeah,
and that's weird. Like, what is Bowen doing if you can't figure out how to use those? Like, if Shane Bowen can't figure out how to use these 3 players, these 3 talents, I should say, then what is going on with this?
Especially because you have a very competent player at the second level in Okereke,
right?
Good in this game as well, and then you have
physical DBs who are coming up and helping you, right? Or what were you going to say? I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say you have secondary pieces who are solid in run support too. Like you have young safeties, but some of those guys are pretty damn good in run support. I know Pinnock got called with a couple wildly frustrating pass interference, and he kind of did get mossed and got the ball ripped away from him from Zach Ertz. To me, a lot of people were like, "Oh, wow, that should have been challenged." And I was like,
"No."
To me, it looked like Zach Ertz just stole it from Jason Pinnock. Like I think that was clearly Zach.
And they always rule that to the receiver, so it would have been a waste of a challenge.
It's like a tie goes to runner type of situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, there's not like a deficiency of talent on the defense outside of corner behind Deontay Banks. That's like the big question mark. Whenever Cordell Flott's out there, I'm like, dude, this like you can't put him out there. He's just
that's one I'm willing to take the L on because I thought Flott had some developmental tools at 19 years old with that kind of length, but he's just not developing the way that I thought he might develop, and obviously the way Joe Shane thought he might develop.
Yeah, no, to me, he's a weak link that any offensive coordinator is going to circle and they're going to attack, and they're going to attack. And you can't have that on this defense, especially if you can't defend the run and have the liability of not being able to defend the run combined with Cordell Flott being your second cornerback on the outside. It's just a recipe for disaster. Ronald, thank you so much. Once again, my man, maybe I'm in the minority here. Kayvon and Burns are not performing and aren't seeing double teams. Dex is. Our defense is predicated on base rush, and Ojulari performed well in 1/10 of the snaps. Yeah, I saw a couple good Ojulari reps out there. I will say Burns was double teamed frequently against Minnesota.
Getting chipped. He was chipped all last week, and he's still getting chipped this week. So we'll update you on that. But Burns was chipped last week,
and I felt like Kayvon definitely had a fire lit under his ass in this game. Like he was running around like a madman. I think he
didn't really make that many plays.
I know. Again, I don't. Well, we'll get to the tape to see. Ryan Schmier, thank you so much, bud. Says we should be celebrating this offensive line right now. It's a good point. They allowed no sacks, fueled the run game, and only allowed 5 pressures. Instead, bad coaching and roster management lost this game. Appreciate you guys. Hey, Ryan, I agree. Dan?
It's the truth. Like, this is like where we're at as a fan base right now. And thank you, Ryan Schmier, for the donation. But this is it. Like, we should be celebrating, Nick, right now. We should have just won a game and had the best our offensive line has looked in years, dude. And we've been what have we said for years? Like, there's been debates among fans all for the last 4 years. The Daniel Jones debate, this horrific debate that's like taken over our fan base. But the one thing everyone's always agreed on is that the O-line has not been good, and the O-line has been horrible for years, and we need the O-line to take a jump. It looks like the O-line is finally taking a jump, and yet we can't even celebrate this. We can't even enjoy it. We can't do anything because the Giants are 0-2 again for 9 of the last 12 years, and they're probably out of the playoffs, if we're going to be honest about the situation. I know they have a 1.7% chance historically, but this team is not making the playoffs this year, despite the O-line making the jump. Like, we thought, like, when that O-line makes the jump, boom, everything clicks. And I just don't think that's going to be the case anymore because of what Ryan said here. You know, there's too many other issues going on, coaching and roster management-wise.
Mark Cavallero, thank you so much, said, you are Mara and Tish. Team is 0-8. What do you do as an owner? So I think, Dan, it's like a big embarrassment for an owner to clean house mid-season, and knowing or attempting to know and understand John Mara, I don't know if he wants to do that.
I don't think he wants to do that either. Yeah. But I also think on the flip side, it gets to an embarrassing enough point, and 0-8 basically is an embarrassing enough point if the Giants were to get to that.
So I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, go.
Who is taking over the head? Now, if you had Steve Spagnuolo as your DC, like the Giants did in the past,
Shane Bowen,
you do it. Is it Shane Bowen, the way the defense is performing? I don't think so. Is it Mike Kafka, the guy who got demoted from? Probably not. If Wink was here and everything was like with the locker room, and Wink and Daboll never had that kind of tiff. I can see them going to Wink because he has a lot of respect around the league. He's been in the NFL for a while. But Shane Bowen, he's probably going to be one of the reasons they're 0-8, one of the primary reasons they're 0-8. So I don't know who would be assuming that role, which makes me feel like unless Daboll like does something just insane, that he would get canned after 0-8.
Well,
you need somebody to replace him.
I'll say this. I would think it would be Mike Kafka. I'll tell you why. He's had head coaching interviews. He got promoted this offseason to an assistant coaching job. And I'll say this, like, I'm going to give credit to him, and I'm going to give credit to Daniel Jones for this. They talked all week, Jones and Kafka, about how they needed to get back to the basics and really focus on footwork. And anyone who watched the tape of week 1 saw some of the worst footwork of Daniel Jones' career, a footwork that any quarterback could ever put out there and never have success. That kind. And I don't know. We haven't seen the tape yet this week, Nick, but from the broadcast angle, it didn't look like I was seeing Jones with a lot of poor footwork passes in this game. Looked like he was, and obviously the pass production plays a role in that because it was so good. Yeah. He had so many clean pockets, but like he did a good job squaring his shoulders, keeping his feet toward the target, pointed toward the target, and like really connected. He looked really connected as a thrower this game. So maybe Kafka deserves some credit for that, like working with him on footwork. I don't know, dude, but I would put it, if they're going to make that move, I think it would be him. But yeah, I don't know, man. It's like, I don't think they're going to go 0-8, Nick, but I'll say this, like Cleveland is a winnable game and Seattle is a winnable game. The other, what do they have? Another 4 besides that in their first 8 games? Yeah, that's how math works. The other 4 games, you can look at them on paper and be like, I don't know, man. I don't know a team that looks like this has any chance in those games.
One thing I'll say is maybe the defense just like gets more comfortable with the terminology and where to be and how to fit certain things, certain looks, and the young guys who are showing promise to all of us from a mental standpoint, take development that we might not see, but like it's happening and it leads to more playing time for them, which leads to better results on the football field. Hopefully something like that can happen to solidify this defensive unit, because if it doesn't, it's not looking good. But if the team was 0-8, what would we do as owners, Mark? I don't know. I think you have to ride it out and can everybody at the end of the season.
Yeah. I think I'm with you on that.
HB Greg, and Daniel Jones wouldn't be starting at that point either with the injury stuff, mind you. HB Greg, think I watched 2 of the worst teams today. Don't think either team can win much playing like this. Also not fair to put the entire O on a rookie. I mean, you drafted him top 10. I'm okay with putting the entire offense on the rookie.
Yeah, it worked.
And in my opinion, he handled it. People will be like, oh, he didn't handle it because he dropped the pass. No, like he dropped the pass. Mistakes happen. That's going to happen. Malik Neighbors handled that role very freaking well. He looked good out there. He took a freaking massive hit from our guy, Frankie Louvu, and he popped back up. And luckily there was nothing wrong there, but he's a dude and he's the catalyst to this offense. And I'm glad that he's that guy. So if you have to design an offense centralized around him, so be it. Like, I'm completely fine with that, but I just would hope somebody else could step up and, alleviate some of the burden.
No, I think I honestly think this is their best chance. Honestly, the way that they kind of devised the game plan today, fortunately, they won't get the Washington defense every week, but just to kind of minimize Jones a little bit, don't make him process too much. These max protects, these 2-man routes, and just fire it off to Neighbors, let him do everything. I think that's their best chance to actually move the ball. And that's like what happened today, because that started to open up some things for Singletary too in the run game. And so now you have the 2-man game going. It's basically Singletary and Neighbors is your entire offense. Don't make Jones do too much and let the offensive line kind of play the role that they're playing, which is an improved line. I'm okay with that personally, Greg. I will say this though, to your first part of your comment. Thank you for the donation. We are probably watching 2 of the worst teams in the NFL today. Obviously, Carolina is in the mix, and Denver as well. Those are probably the only 2 teams I think are actually worse than the Giants right now, Carolina and Denver, because obviously Washington beat them today. But keep in mind, when you're watching the 2 worst teams, the Giants have won a lot of these games against the worst teams over the last few years. Last year against Washington twice, the Patriots game last year. Cost them the quarterback last year. I love Neighbors, but it cost them the quarterback last year. So, if you're really thinking about the future, it is what it is. But yeah, we did probably watch the 2 worst teams today.
Ronald, thank you so much once again. He says, did you guys wonder, how do we not press single high, contain Jaden Daniels, and send some dudes up the middle gaps, make him beast us in the air? There were times where they did. Micah McFadden got home kind of once. It's like he got home and forgot something outside and then walked back outside because he didn't actually get home. He let Jaden Daniels slip away. But there were times where they did that. And I feel like They do that well when they can get into those sub packages, when they can get multiple defensive backs out there, when there's one linebacker out there. They're able to devise some exotic looks and some exotic blitzes, how Shane Bowen slants the defensive lineman, uses certain stunts, pirate stunts. This game, they were able to get into those packages much more frequently than they were able to in week one, but I don't know if it was as much. I had to get to the tape to really see. But yeah, they don't press. That's one thing. They like to be off. They play top down to keep everything in front of them. And that does not coincide well when you're playing against an air raid system that keeps everything horizontal and close to the line of scrimmage. It really just puts a point of emphasis on your players to tackle. And the Giants, I don't know if they were perfect with that.
But let me say this to that point, Nick, because it's something we discussed last week when we were breaking down the tape of Shane Bowen's defense. We said Wink Martindale always had a game plan specific to the team he was facing. It doesn't feel through 2 games like Shane Bowen has that. This game plan was not very specific to what he was facing. It's kind of him running his defense. And I agree there were some good blitz calls. Yeah, sorry.
So I'll say this, and I'm not sticking up for him. I think it's been horrendous. So I want to make that clear. But just to, provide possible context, Shane Bowen has young guys in his secondary learning a system, and everybody's basically new to the system. We're 2 games in. If we remember back in 2007, the defense looked horrendous under Steve Spagnuolo because no one really understood or knew the defense. Now, players are not practicing nearly as much as they did back then. So there is an adjustment period that I'm willing to at least give a little bit of grace to, but it does not look promising. It does not look promising from a run fitting standpoint, especially because that's the kind of stuff you need to really be dialed into. But they were not in week one.
It cost them the game in this game.
Yeah.
It really did.
A lot of things that cost them the game in this. Yeah.
There's a lot that cost them the game, but I really think the run fitting was a major factor because I don't think this offense would have moved the ball that well, Washington, without running the ball. I don't think Jaden is at that point yet, and I don't love their passing games, the system-wise. So it really hurt them this game.
Kyle, thank you so much, Kyle Kilday. We really appreciate that.
Appreciate it, Kyle.
Says, worst case scenario, loss, but Daniel Jones didn't look bad. He'll play next week, get decapitated by Myles Garrett, and cost us an extra $23 million next year. Root problem, passing on full reboot thrice in past 6 years. Sorry, but I blame Mara.
No, I respect that, Kyle. I said, look, the rot, you have to figure out where the rot starts and then cut it off. But when you are 0-2 in 9 of the last 12 years, it's hard to blame a GM or a coach or even a quarterback, really, in that regard. So I agree with you. It's just a matter of, well, nothing's really going to change because he's the owner of the team. And so, it might be, and I don't really want this because he did such a bad job at the end, man. But like, if Belichick comes in, that might be just the shock the organization needs to for Mara to be like, I have to take a big step back. And Belichick's probably going to be like, I don't want your nephew and your second uncle in this personnel department. Like, I'm taking these guys out. This is not how we did it when it was back in the day with Parcells and when Wellington was around and, all these different scenarios that led to the Giants when they used to be one of the best teams in NFL, or at least one of the better teams in the NFL during those Belichick years. I'll go back to that for a second real quick, though. I will say this. I'm not worried, Nick and Kyle, about this $23 million injury guarantee for Daniel Jones. It's just going to be too much stress to worry about that week after week with him. Because look, Nick, he's putting his body on the line. Like these runs, these design quarterback runs, Daboll doesn't give a crap. It's clear about this injury guarantee, which kind of tells me where Daboll feels like he's at as a coach right now from a hot seat standpoint. Because he's just,
he's just trying to win games, though, man.
He's trying to win games. That's right. Yeah. That's all he's trying to do.
Take baby steps at this point. Like, you're not going to look that far into the future when you don't even know if you're going to have a job in 6 weeks. You need to win football games, and running Daniel Jones is the best way to do that, unfortunately.
I think Joe Shane's in the same boat, by the way. And those runs are giving the Giants, like they were good, successful runs this game. But Jones is taking hits on all of those runs. He's taking big hits. So I'm just at the point where I throw my hands up, Kyle. If it happens, it happens. And it makes us an even bigger laughing stock if we have to allocate that money to Jones next year against the cap. But I'm just kind of hoping that he just doesn't get a major injury.
Dwayne Murphy Jr., thank you so much, says, how are all these fans ready to fire Daboll, but don't want to acknowledge Jones is not playing well? He was not good this week either. Yeah, I'm going to wait for the tape. Now, for me, I don't think Jones was good, but he wasn't a catastrophe like he was last week. He wasn't the reason why the Giants lost. He wasn't probably a top 3 reason why the Giants lost this week. But that's kind of the bar we're at with our quarterback, which kind of tells you the situation with the New York Giants as well.
I would take it even a step higher than that, Nick and Dwayne. I think he was fine this week. I think he was even a little bit better than how that was. And I'm not saying you don't think that either, Nick.
No.
I'm just saying, like, I think this was fine. I think he made some good plays. The Neighbors play on fourth down was a good escape and a good throw on target. He had a bunch of on target throws. Some of the Neighbors catches that were yak were because of Daniel Jones putting the ball in front of the wide receiver for a rare occasion and letting Neighbors kind of catch it and turn up field. Not the ones where Neighbors has to catch it and slow down his momentum, which happened a lot with Jones over his career. So, like, I feel like his ball placement was better than this game, Nick. But I agree with you too, Dwayne. I'm not going to overrate what we saw. There was no deep throws. Neighbors had like 7% of his yards after the catch. And that one pass that Jones got fooled on where he thought the safety wouldn't be there and the safety was there, that ball looked ugly. That ball looked really ugly. It floated out there to Neighbors, really floaty with not a lot of drive. And every time he's kind of thrown a deep pass this year, it's looked really, really bad, to be honest. So that's a concern. Like, it's not like, here's the thing with Jones, like Dwayne, with where Nick and I are at, or I don't know, I want to speak for you, Nick. I'm done with Jones long-term. He'll play out this year. He'll play until he's done.
I don't have to speak for you. You're on a podcast with me, Dan. You know how I
don't want to speak for you.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, of course, you know how I feel on this, though.
I know how you feel, but I don't want to say it in case
you
change your mind or in case, it's just, I don't want to put those words in your mouth.
Gotcha.
But I know you feel that way. Nick and I, there's nothing that's going to happen this year that's going to change our opinion of Daniel Jones. We did our best here to give you guys a chance. I know a lot of you want us to keep giving him a chance. This is not a guy that you win Super Bowls with. I think it's very clear at this point in year 6. But yeah, he's not playing. He's not playing well. He played fine today, right? He executed an easy game plan where they gave him so much protection, and that's it.
Bob Wells, thank you so much. We're having a little bit of slowness on my end right here. Bob, there's your question. Dan, you have any info on what is going on with Hyatt and why he is not seeing the field? Something is going on.
Yeah, it's weird, Bob. I mean, Brian Daboll said he's our wide receiver 3-4, and this is not an offense that has much of a rotation going on at receiver. It sucks because Hyatt looked like he really improved this preseason and in training camp. It looked like he improved his route running, his size, his play strength, and he put together some really good tape last year. He really did. But right now, I guess he's in the proverbial doghouse right now.
John Carrolley asked basically the same question. What's going on with Hyatt? And I think Dan nailed that. Daboll said as much. Like, yeah, he's our 3-4, and it's going to be game plan specific. Well, this game plan, he wasn't out there, so it was Darius Slayton, and it's not good for Hyatt, especially after such a glowing offseason of hard work that he put in with Mike Rowe. And then he asks, tight ends, no targets. I did think that was a little odd. I thought Theo Johnson was, I think he had like an 80 or 87% snap share or something in week 1. It was like really high. I thought he would be more involved. But Daniel Jones really had his eye for one player, and it was Malik Neighbors. And I'm not even really faulting Jones for that because they weren't covering Malik Neighbors that well. Now, again, we'll have to substantiate all that on a tape, and we will tomorrow. But he was open a lot, caught a lot of passes, gained a lot of yardage, scored a touchdown.
Yeah, they did everything they should. They executed it well because that team couldn't defend Malik Neighbors. But look, the reality of the situation is, if we're calling a spade, and I know you know this, Nick, Daboll is now 2 years in a row, or the first year and then now, designed an offense to basically hide what he believes Daniel Jones' deficiency is, which is understanding how to process defenses, doing complex things from a processing standpoint. And that's why they're not running a lot of 11 personnel, because they don't trust Daniel Jones to run 11 personnel, which is a really bad sign, to be completely honest. Like, it's not really acceptable.
I mean, yeah, it's one reason. I mean, there's a few, but the tight end target thing, though, to go back to John's question, that was a little peculiar. HB Greg, thank you so much. Said 9 of 12 of 0 and 2 occurs when the standard is only don't embarrass me. No organization that demands excellence trots Jones out there with no competition or lets Daboll lose multiple games not having a kicker. Fair enough.
That's a fair point, Greg. It's a really fair criticism, like, to say what you've said. And I think a lot of Giants fans have exuded this criticism, and I don't think they're totally wrong or right. I would lean toward them more being right. Like, the fact that they went into this year with Daniel Jones as the unquestioned QB1 is not something that you see other franchises doing. And then to lose 2 games because you don't have a kicker, it's embarrassing. And like you said, it's why they've lost. They've been 0-2 in 9 of the last 12 seasons out of the playoffs.
Exactly, man. Just Thank you so much. Says Burns disappointed again and Kayvon outplayed him. Hey, if Kayvon's going to outplay Burns, I'll support that. If Kayvon actually, plays well, it looked like
great,
he played well. Burns again, I think he was dealing with I saw a lot of running back chip. I don't want to make excuses for him. He's getting paid like a top end edge rusher. He's not TJ Watt. He's not Myles Garrett. He's not that kind of player. I still think he's a very good football player, and I'm hoping days are going to be brighter for him. That's my assessment on Brian Burns, and I'm excited to watch him tomorrow on tape.
I think it's fair.
Neil believes. Says Daniel Jones plays well versus the Commanders and bad teams. I still have no faith in him consistently. I hope the front office doesn't get duped by today.
No, I mean, Neil, unless Daniel Jones plays like he played today or even better for the rest of the season, they're not going to get duped again by this situation. This is clearly it for Jones this year.
Christian H says, hey, gentlemen, I couldn't see the whole game, but how was a Kingsbury masterclass versus Bowen and kicker mismanagement allowed to happen this badly? Yeah, it's kind of what we've been asking this entire
question. Like, Kingsbury doesn't have masterclasses against anyone, so it's not a good sign that he had a masterclass against Shane Bowen. So yeah, it's really frustrating.
Got two questions from HB Greg. HB Greg, thank you for both of these donations. One says, Jones had protection plus weapons versus a terrible defense. Wasn't this going to unlock Jones? Don't get all the love just because he looked horrible week one. I think people just saw him not crap all over himself as he did in week one. They saw him play competently, and it just deflected blame away from Daniel Jones for this loss. Whereas last week, it seemed like most of the loss kind of fell on the shoulders of Daniel Jones. So that's, I think, why it seems like everyone's positive about Daniel Jones. I don't want to speak for the entire Giants fan base, but I think a lot of people kind of understand where they're at with Daniel Jones. And this loss, it wasn't necessarily the product of him. He was on the bench most of the time because the defense couldn't get Jaden Daniels off the field.
Yeah, I don't think this loss was on Jones really at all, Nick. I think he played pretty damn well and maximized most of his possessions. I think the reality of what you said, though, HB Greg, is just for a while now, Giants fans have set a really low bar for what is acceptable quarterback play. Fans have made it clear with the Jones era that they don't need really great quarterback play. They just need pretty good play occasionally, and then reasons to excuse the bad play because of the teammates. And hopefully there's going to be a time, and you know how much that's frustrated me, Nick, over my tenure doing this with you. Hopefully there's a time where we can set a higher bar for quarterback play as a fan base. I'm hoping for that.
Same here. And HB Greg also says, just worried about all the stress Neighbors will go through if our offense's success is purely on him. Looks amazing. Hope he's able to be a rookie and make mistakes. Yeah, same here. He's going to make certain mistakes. He's still better than any receiver the Giants have had since they traded away 13.
Yeah. I mean, he's putting up numbers that only 13 put up from a target share standpoint, from a yards after the catch, and a total yard standpoint of your team's passing yards. I mean, he's just done phenomenal things already. And yeah, it's going to be stressful for him. That's life when you have this situation that you're in as a rookie. But hopefully he's mentally tough enough. And I think he kind of is already. I kind of already feel locked in about Neighbors from an off-field standpoint, just based on his comments today, Nick, and how he reacted to that adversity of dropping that catch that would have won the game for the Giants. And again, there's a difference between a catch that would have won the game and then being the guy who loses the game, which I was trying to make the point of.
It might not have even won in the game, though. They still had to probably score a touchdown.
True. They couldn't kick a field goal. They just had it. You're right, actually. Yeah. That's a good point.
He just might have put it into overtime or delayed the inevitable, given how the Giants.
They could have kicked a field goal from anywhere on the field at that point.
Didn't seem like it, which is wild to think about, but whatever. Chris Perry.
How many other teams have been through that, Nick?
I don't know. I'm sure there are some.
I
feel like other teams, though, they'll be like, oh yeah, this guy played soccer in fourth grade,
and now he's kicking field goals,
and he does it. Our guy's like, I have no idea what a football is. I don't know. I can't do anything.
I don't know. It's crazy.
Chris Perry, thank you so much, says, did you know if you take a gummy and watch the Giants game on mute while listening to the Doors, it's not so bad? Thanks as always, guys. Chris, I wouldn't know, actually. I wouldn't, but no. I can imagine. And I'm sure it wouldn't be as bad. I'm sure it would be.
I don't think I've ever been that for a Giant game.
Yeah.
I've been drunk before, but never that.
Yeah. And then Independent Outsider, thank you so much. And Chris Perry, you do you, bro. Independent Outsider, what will it take to really energize this team? Our identity is supposed to be our pass rush. Acknowledgement, Drew Phillips played well. healthy kicker. We don't know what those are. And yeah, Drew Phillips did play exceptionally well. I'm really excited about that. And then yeah, we just need really something to energize the D. And I believe Manscaped is one of our ads now. So maybe I should roll into the advertisement about energizing our D and maximizing it. But, you know, I don't know, man. It's rough. It's rough. And I think you just need to not commit stupid penalties on third down. Keep the defense, or keep the opposing offense behind the sticks, 3rd and 6 plus, get into those exotic packages, and hopefully you can get some sacks and some pressure with those pass rushers. But again, they're not going to be in 3rd and 7 plus situations if you're giving up 5-6 yards per clip.
That's for sure. All right.
Any others? Yeah, Chris Perry again says, I thought Seahorn and Toomer played well today.
That's what happens.
Oh man, you gotta give us the lowdown on where you're getting those gummies from.
Yeah, but they're connected
back in the 90s.
Yeah, really. All right. Thanks for everybody for tuning in and listening. It's going to be a rough year. We know that now. I hope you guys stick with us, help support us, because there's going to be good content coming. We're going to break down tape. And again, like, regardless of what happens, you know, we all believe, or Nick and I believe at least, that quarterback can change the trajectory of this franchise like Stroud did for Houston and Burrow with Cincy, but you still need players around them. One quarterback won't do everything. So we need guys to develop. This roster has to get better, Nick. We need guys like Drew Phillips to continue this steady drumbeat. We need guys like Newman. We need all these guys to play good football. And we're going to be here breaking down the tape to see the progress that they make. And then, of course, we're going to get the draft season eventually, which, of course, we already have to be thinking about now, which is sad. But that's when we're really going to deliver. So stick with us, because, you know, good stuff's coming along the way. I can't believe I just shouted out something that might be in April.
It's not good. All right. Take care, everybody.